Hello and welcome back. Let's perform an exercise combining most of the things that we have done, that is actors, participant, activation box, and the alternative frame using the alt tag. Do you remember this diagram? The diagram illustrates a sequence diagram of an application where a user sends a request for data to an application, and the application sends that request also to a server, which fetches the request from the database, and then it uses an alternative frame, the alt, to check if the data exists, and if it exists, it returns the data, and if the data doesn't exist, it terminates and sends back that data not found. So we're going to use this to test the use of actors, participants, alternative frames, and activation box. Because of the length of this code, we're going to switch to writing our tags in Visual Studio Code. And as you remember, to do that, you're going to create a file that has a .mv extension, and we're also going to have 3 columns, have mermaid written to indicate that this is a mermaid file, and then we can start our sequence diagram. After that, the goal is to have an end user get data from the server. So we're going to have some objects that will participate in this system, and I'm going to paste them here. We have an actor, which is a user, and it has a label called end user. We have 3 participants, which are the application's objects, and this is the application itself, the server, and then the database. Now let's start the interaction. The user will connect to the application and request for data. So I'm going to have user connecting to the app and then request for data. So this is the first connection. Now that the application is connected, it's going to then activate the app. The app is now activated, and then we have the app connecting to the server. So we have app connecting to the server, and that will fetch out data. And then, of course, now that the server is connected, the server also will be activated. Then from the server, there is a connection to the database. Here we'll say server connect to DB, and then it requests for query. And now that we're connected to the server, you can guess what we'll do. The next one is to activate the DB also, and the database fetch the query, and the database returns the query or the data back to the server, and you will have a return of the query to the server. The appropriate one should be this. There is a return if there is data in the database. What if we don't have data in the database? This process will require an alternate tag to show us if there is no data, what it should do. Between the query going to the database and returning back, we're going to have to add the alternate statement to give us the condition. Right here, I'm going to say alt and give a description, that is, does data exists? I'm just going to push this in to make it a little bit more readable. And if data doesn't exist, then it should be doing something else instead of doing this code. The description for the else statement is if data doesn't exist, then the server will return back to the app, go directly to the app and terminate, and then say terminate data not found. And after that, you put an end to end this else statement. Now there is something we didn't add here. When we activated the database, when we got to the database, there was an activation box that's supposed to show here. There was an activity that happens here. Yes, we activated it, but for us to make it show, we're going to have to type the activate DB. So you can see here, the activation happens at this point when there is data, but when there is no data, the information moves from the server back to the application that data does not exist. So you can see we use the alternate text to have multiple outcomes in how the data is processed using the alternate frame. And at this point, the server is done with his work. So we should deactivate the server to show the activation point of the server. You can see that the activation box for server is showing here. Now that the server is done, we're going to have to return the data that we got from this point. We're going to have to return that data. App returns the data to the user and the data is displayed. You can see that now the data is displayed here. Now that the application is done, we can now deactivate the application. Deactivate app. Yeah, so you can see the activation box for active application started immediately the request was made. The activation for server started when we've made a request to fetch the data, and also for database when the request was fetched. And when there is data, it returned the data to the server, and the server returns the data to the app. I think we didn't do that here. So we're going to have to come here before the else statement. The server should return the data to the app, and that should say data returned to the app. Yeah, so we have request made, data fetched, database query fetched, and the data is returned to the server. And then from the server, it is returned to the app, and then the data is returned to the user. But if there is no data, it's going to jump this section and then it's just going to terminate. So you can see in this example how we're able to use actors, participants, activation box, and alternate frame for implementing a sequence diagram as shown. In this exercise, we showed how we use different elements of a sequence diagram in Mermaid.js to produce a system flow and interaction for a user requesting for data from a database server. We use elements like actors, participant, activation box, alternate frame in one sequence diagram to produce a compelling visualization of our system. You can check out my full video tutorial on Udemy titled Mastering Mermaid.js Diagram, Charts and Data Visualization, which teaches in-depth course on different Mermaid.js diagram and chart implementation. Check out the link in the description for more details.